There comes a moment in every life when silence becomes heavier than truth. Not because the heart lacks loyalty, but because the soul is tired of carrying expectations it never agreed to. Family pressure does not always arrive as cruelty. Often it arrives wrapped in concern, tradition, and duty. It whispers instead of shouts. It asks instead of commands. Yet slowly, quietly, it begins to decide who you should be, how you should live, and how much of yourself you are allowed to keep. And one day, you wake up realizing that in trying to keep everyone comfortable, you have made yourself invisible. Choosing peace is not an act of rejection. It is an act of awakening. It is the moment you understand that love does not require self-destruction, and respect does not demand silence. This choice does not come with applause. It comes with discomfort, misunderstood intentions, and lonely nights where you question your strength. But peace has always demanded courage, not the loud kind that seeks validation, but the quiet kind that stands firm without explanation, the kind that says, "I can love you and still choose myself." This is not a speech about blame. It is not a declaration of distance or resentment. It is a reckoning with truth. A truth that says you are allowed to breathe without permission. You are allowed to grow beyond expectations that were placed on you before you even knew who you were. And when you finally choose peace, not to punish others, but to protect your inner world, you are not breaking a bond. You are saving a life, your own. When loyalty begins to cost you your soul, there is a silent agreement many people make early in life, long before they understand its consequences. It is the agreement to be loyal at any cost, loyal to expectations, loyal to roles assigned without consent, loyal to family narratives that were written before your voice had a chance to exist. At first, this loyalty feels noble. It feels like love. It feels like responsibility. But over time, something subtle begins to shift. What once felt like devotion starts to feel like weight. And the soul, though patient, begins to grow tired of carrying a burden it was never meant to hold. Loyalty becomes dangerous when it asks you to disappear. Not all pressure comes with raised voices or obvious control. Much of it arrives quietly, through disappointment, comparison, and unspoken rules. You are praised when you comply and questioned when you pause. You are celebrated when you fit the mold and corrected when you grow beyond it. Slowly, you learn that approval is conditional, and without realizing it, you begin editing yourself, not because you are dishonest, but because peace seems easier when you stay small. This is where the conflict begins. The heart wants harmony, but the soul wants truth. The heart says, "Endure a little more." The soul asks, "For how long?" And that question becomes louder with every sacrifice that goes unnoticed, every dream postponed, every boundary swallowed. Until one day, loyalty no longer feels like love. It feels like abandonment of self. And that is the most painful betrayal of all, because it is happening from the inside. There is a powerful illusion that choosing yourself means hurting others. This belief keeps many people trapped in lives that drain them quietly, but the truth is more complex. You can care deeply and still be overwhelmed. You can respect your family and still recognize that their expectations are costing you your peace. Loyalty was never meant to erase identity. It was meant to coexist with it. When loyalty demands silence, exhaustion, and constant self-doubt, it has crossed a line it was never meant to cross. The soul does not rebel suddenly. It warns gently, through fatigue that sleep cannot fix, through resentment that appears without intention, through a heaviness that follows you even in moments that should feel joyful. These are not signs of weakness. They are signals of imbalance. They are reminders that something sacred within you is being ignored. And the longer those signals are dismissed, the louder they become. At some point, you must ask yourself a difficult question. Am I being loyal out of love or out of fear? Fear of disappointing, fear of being misunderstood, fear of being labeled ungrateful, fear of standing alone. Fear is a powerful motivator, but it is a poor foundation for a life. A life built on fear may look stable from the outside, but inside, it slowly collapses. Peace cannot survive where fear is in charge. Choosing peace does not require dramatic confrontations or harsh words. Often, it begins internally, It begins with honesty, with acknowledging that you are tired, not of your family, but of losing yourself. It begins when you stop justifying your exhaustion and start respecting it, when you understand that your limits are not flaws but boundaries asking to be honored. There is strength in recognizing that love does not demand self-sacrifice without end. True connection allows room for individuality. True loyalty does not punish growth. When you choose peace, you are not rejecting where you came from. You are simply refusing to live in a way that breaks you. And that refusal is not cruelty, it is clarity. The moment you choose peace, guilt often follows. This is normal. Guilt is the echo of old conditioning, reminding you of who you used to be when you said yes to everything. But guilt is not a moral compass. It is a habit, and habits can be unlearned. Peace, once chosen, teaches you something powerful, that you are allowed to exist without constantly proving your worth. When loyalty begins to cost you your soul, the bravest thing you can do is pause, not to accuse, not to escape, but to realign, to remember that your life is not a debt you owe, it is a responsibility you carry. And choosing peace is not the end of loyalty, it is the beginning of a healthier, wiser form of it. One where you remain present, grounded, and whole. Peace is not rebellion, it is maturity. There is a common misunderstanding that choosing peace is an act of defiance, that when you stop complying with every demand, you are somehow turning your back on those who raised you, supported you, or stood beside you. But peace is not rebellion. Rebellion is loud, reactive, and fueled by anger. Peace is quiet. It is thoughtful. It is measured. It does not seek to prove a point. It seeks to protect what matters most, the inner stability that allows a person to live with dignity and clarity. Maturity begins the moment you stop confusing obedience with love. As children, we are taught that approval is earned through compliance. We learn that being good often means being agreeable, available, and accommodating. But adulthood asks different questions. It asks whether you can make decisions without constant validation. It asks whether you can stand calmly in your truth, even when others do not immediately understand it. Peace is the answer to those questions. It is not an escape from responsibility. It is the assumption of a deeper one. Many people believe that strength must announce itself, that if you are firm, you must be forceful. If you are certain, you must be confrontational. But true strength rarely needs volume. It is visible in restraint, in the ability to pause instead of react, in the choice to disengage from unnecessary conflict without resentment. Peace does not argue its worth. It simply exists, steady and unshaken even when challenged. When you choose peace, you are not rejecting dialogue. You are redefining it. You are saying that your well-being is not up for negotiation. That constant tension is not a requirement for belonging. This choice often unsettles those who are accustomed to access without limits. Not because you are doing something wrong, but because you are doing something different. Growth always disrupts familiar patterns before it establishes healthier ones. Maturity also means understanding that not every expectation deserves a response. Some expectations are inherited, outdated, or formed without awareness of who you have become. Meeting them blindly does not make you respectful. It makes you absent from your own life. Peace teaches discernment. It teaches you to separate what is reasonable from what is habitual, what is loving from what is draining, what deserves your energy from what quietly consumes it. There is an emotional intelligence required to choose peace under pressure. It demands self-awareness, the ability to recognize your limits without shame. It demands patience, the willingness to endure misunderstanding without becoming defensive. And it demands courage, the resolve to stay grounded when others project their discomfort onto your choices. This is not rebellion. This is regulation. This is someone who has learned that emotional chaos is not a sign of depth, and constant sacrifice is not a measure of loyalty. One of the clearest signs of maturity is the ability to disappoint others without losing respect for yourself. This is not indifference. It is balance. It is understanding that you cannot be everything to everyone without becoming nothing to yourself. Peace allows you to step back from the need to be approved and step into the responsibility of being aligned. And alignment brings a calm that no amount of external validation can replace. Choosing peace also changes how you communicate. You speak with fewer explanations and more intention. You stop over-justifying your choices and start trusting them. You realize that clarity does not require consensus, that you can be firm without being harsh and kind without being compliant. Peace refines your presence. It removes urgency from your voice and replaces it with confidence. There will be moments when your calm is misunderstood as distance, when your boundaries are questioned, when your silence is interpreted as withdrawal. These moments test your resolve. But maturity does not rush to correct every assumption. It understands that those who are ready will listen, and those who are not may need time. Peace does not chase understanding. It remains consistent until understanding catches up. In the end, peace is not a refusal to care. It is a decision to care wisely. It is the realization that emotional stability is not selfish, and self-respect is not negotiable. When you choose peace, you are not breaking away from family values. You are evolving them. You are modeling a healthier way of relating, one rooted in respect rather than pressure, and in maturity rather than fear. The quiet damage of constant expectation. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that does not come from work, effort, or responsibility. It comes from living under constant expectation, the expectation to be available, to be agreeable, to fulfill roles without questioning them. This exhaustion is quiet. It does not always announce itself with collapse or complaint. Instead, it settles deep within the mind, slowly draining energy, enthusiasm, and presence. From the outside, everything may look stable, but inside, something vital is wearing thin. Constant expectation teaches you to live on alert. You begin anticipating reactions before making decisions. You measure your words. You rehearse explanations that may never be spoken. Over time, this hyper-awareness becomes normal. You stop noticing how much mental space it occupies, how much emotional energy it consumes. Peace becomes rare, not because life is demanding, but because your inner world is never allowed to rest. The most damaging part of constant expectation is not the pressure itself. It is the loss of self-trust. When your choices are consistently evaluated through the lens of others' approval, you begin doubting your own instincts. You ask yourself not what feels right, but what will be accepted. Not what aligns with your values, but what will maintain harmony. Slowly, decision by decision, your inner voice becomes quieter, replaced by a constant internal negotiation. This erosion of self does not happen overnight. It happens through small compromises that seem harmless at first. Saying yes when you mean no. Postponing rest. Adjusting your goals to avoid tension. None of these choices feel dramatic. In fact, they are often praised. You are seen as dependable, thoughtful, considerate. But beneath that image, something essential is being traded away, your sense of autonomy. There is also an emotional toll that rarely receives attention, the suppression of authentic feeling. When expectations are constant, emotions become inconvenient. Fatigue feels inappropriate. Frustration feels disloyal. Even joy can feel risky if it does not align with what others think you should want. So you learn to manage your emotions carefully, revealing only what is acceptable. Over time, this emotional restraint creates distance not only from others, but from yourself. Living this way shapes how you see your worth. You begin associating value with usefulness. You feel deserving only when you are needed, praised, or compliant. Rest feels earned rather than necessary. Boundaries feel selfish rather than healthy. And when you finally pause, when you feel the weight of exhaustion and consider stepping back, guilt rushes in, convincing you that your needs are unreasonable. But constant expectation is not a measure of love. It is often a sign of unexamined patterns passed down over time, patterns where roles matter more than well-being, where tradition outweighs individuality. Understanding this does not require blame, it requires awareness. Awareness that pressure can exist even in environments that care, and that good intentions do not cancel harmful impact. The damage of constant expectation often appears in subtle ways: a lack of motivation, difficulty relaxing, a sense of emptiness even during success. These are not failures of character, they are signals that your inner world has been overextended without recovery. that your emotional resources have been used without renewal. Ignoring these signals does not make you stronger, it only deepens the strain. Choosing to address this damage is not an act of confrontation, it is an act of preservation. It begins with allowing yourself to notice how you feel without immediately justifying it, with acknowledging that exhaustion does not require permission, with understanding that your needs are not inconveniences, they are information. Peace starts here, in this honest recognition. When you step away from constant expectation, even slightly, something shifts. You breathe differently, your thoughts slow down. You begin making decisions from clarity rather than obligation. This space can feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable at first, but it is within this space that self-trust begins to return, that your identity re-emerges, not as a role, but as a person. The quiet damage of constant expectation is real, but it is not irreversible. With awareness, boundaries, and patience, balance can be restored. Choosing peace does not mean abandoning responsibility, it means redefining it, so that responsibility includes caring for the person carrying it. Boundaries spoken softly still change everything. Boundaries are often misunderstood. They are imagined as walls, cold, rigid, and divisive. But true boundaries are not built to shut people out. They are built to keep the self intact. They do not announce themselves with force. They do not require raised voices or dramatic ultimatums. The most effective boundaries are often spoken softly, carried with calm consistency rather than confrontation. And yet, they have the power to change everything. Many people avoid boundaries because they fear conflict. They believe that setting limits will create distance, disappointment, or misunderstanding. This fear is understandable, especially for those who have spent years maintaining harmony by accommodating others. But the absence of boundaries does not create peace. It creates quiet exhaustion. When your time, energy, and emotional space are constantly accessible, resentment begins to replace goodwill. Boundaries are not the cause of tension. They are often the remedy for it. Soft boundaries begin with clarity. They require you to understand your limits before you communicate them. This means recognizing when you are overextended, when your patience is thinning, and when your well-being is being compromised. Clarity allows you to speak from a place of self-awareness rather than frustration. Instead of reacting when you are depleted, you respond while you are grounded. This shift alone changes the entire tone of interaction. When boundaries are spoken calmly, they disarm defensiveness. A steady voice carries authority without threat. It signals confidence rather than opposition. You are not asking for permission to exist differently. You are stating what you can and cannot offer. This is not a demand. It is an expression of self-respect. And self-respect, when practiced consistently, teaches others how to engage with you. There is also a discipline required to maintain gentle boundaries. Consistency matters more than intensity. A boundary spoken once and abandoned sends confusion. A boundary upheld quietly over time builds trust. People learn what to expect, not through explanation, but through repetition. This consistency may initially unsettle those who benefited from your flexibility, but it eventually creates a more honest dynamic. Soft boundaries also protect relationships from unspoken resentment. When limits are unclear, disappointment accumulates beneath the surface. Small irritations grow into emotional distance. By expressing boundaries early and calmly, you prevent this build-up. You allow space for mutual respect to develop. You give others the opportunity to adjust rather than unknowingly overstep. It is important to understand that boundaries do not require agreement. Not everyone will immediately understand your choices. Some may question them, others may test them. This does not mean your boundaries are wrong. It means they are new. Growth often feels disruptive before it feels normal. Staying steady through this phase is part of the process. Peace is not achieved by avoiding discomfort, but by navigating it with composure. There is a quiet confidence that comes from honoring your limits. You begin to trust yourself more. You speak less, but with greater intention. You stop over-explaining because you no longer need to justify your existence. This confidence is not arrogance, it is alignment, and alignment creates a presence that commands respect without demanding it. Soft boundaries also teach you something essential about connection. They reveal who is willing to meet you with understanding and who prefers access without accountability. This information is valuable. It helps you invest your energy where it is reciprocated and conserve it where it is not. Boundaries do not separate you from others. They guide you toward healthier forms of closeness. Over time, boundaries reshape your inner world as much as your external relationships. You feel less reactive, more centered. Decisions become clearer because they are no longer filtered through fear of reaction. You realize that peace does not require distance, it requires definition, knowing where you end and others begin. In the end, boundaries spoken softly still change everything because they change you. They move you from endurance to intention, from obligation to choice, from survival to stability. And in that stability, peace is no longer something you seek, it becomes something you live. Choosing peace is choosing your future. Every choice carries a direction, even the ones made quietly. Choosing peace is one of those decisions that may not appear dramatic in the moment, but it alters the path of a life. It is not a single act, it is a commitment. A commitment to move forward with awareness rather than obligation, with intention rather than reaction. When you choose peace, you are not merely responding to present circumstances, you are shaping the future you will live in. Many people believe that peace is passive, that it is the absence of struggle or the avoidance of responsibility. In reality, peace is active. It requires discernment. It asks you to evaluate what you allow into your emotional space and what you no longer carry. This evaluation is not easy, especially when it involves family expectations and long-standing patterns. But the future cannot be built on constant internal conflict. Something must change, and peace is often the first honest answer. Choosing peace means recognizing that time is not unlimited. The years ahead will be shaped by the habits you reinforce today. If you continue to live in tension, tension becomes familiar. If you continue to sacrifice well-being for approval, approval becomes the currency of your self-worth. Peace interrupts this cycle. It redirects your energy towards sustainability, toward a life that can be maintained without emotional depletion. The future shaped by peace looks different internally before it looks different externally. You begin to wake up without immediate pressure. Decisions feel less urgent, more grounded. You respond instead of react. This inner stability influences every area of life: work, relationships, health, and self-perception. You become more present, not because life is easier, but because your mind is no longer consumed by constant negotiation. There is also a generational impact to choosing peace. When you model calm boundaries and emotional regulation, you break cycles that often go unquestioned. You show that respect does not require self-erasure, that love can exist alongside limits. Even if others do not immediately recognize this shift, its influence is lasting. Peace becomes an example, not a lecture. Choosing peace also refines your priorities. You begin to understand the difference between what is urgent and what is important. You stop giving your best energy to situations that drain you and start investing it where it grows. This clarity protects your future from unnecessary regret. It allows you to look back without the weight of wondering who you might have been if you had listened to yourself sooner. There will be moments when choosing peace feels lonely, when the absence of familiar tension leaves a quiet you are not used to. This quiet can feel unsettling at first, but within it you begin to hear your own thoughts again, your own values, your own desires. This reconnection is not indulgence, it is foundation. A future built without self-awareness is fragile. Peace strengthens the ground beneath you. It is important to understand that choosing peace does not mean disengaging from life. It means engaging with it differently, with discernment, with balance, with the understanding that not every battle deserves your energy, and not every expectation defines your worth. This perspective allows you to move forward without carrying the emotional weight of the past. Over time, peace compounds. Small choices accumulate into stability. Calm becomes your default, not your exception. Challenges still arise, but they do not consume you. You meet them with steadiness rather than overwhelm. This resilience is not accidental. It is the result of choosing peace again and again, even when it is misunderstood. In the end, choosing peace is choosing a future where you are present, whole, and aligned. A future where your life is not dictated by pressure, but guided by purpose. Where relationships are built on mutual respect, not silent endurance. And where you can look ahead, not with anxiety, but with quiet confidence, knowing that the path you are on is one you can walk without losing yourself.